Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Welcome rains this week are just what the canola crop needed, even though the Panhandle area could use some more. For an update on the crop, as well as some guidance on sorghum, we caught up with our Extension Cropping System Specialist, Josh Lofton.
It's a beautiful day, and some people think beautiful day is bright, sunny. I love to see these storm clouds, especially with as dry as we've been. And as we've seen a little bit over the last couple weeks, we've started to get kind of the rains hopefully moving back into the system, and we see this has really helped the crop. And what we see here is the canola. We have canola here at the Plant Path Farm in Stillwater. It's looking really good, as is a lot of the canola around the state with these rains. And what it's actually started to do is start moving this crop along quite a bit. We see here, if you kind of look down, this is some of the more immature canola. You can actually start seeing the head, the flowering structure kind of peeking through on some of this canola. And so this kind of symbolizes a lot of management practices or a lot of considerations we have to have here in the next coming weeks for canola.
And what are some of those kind of things that you're starting to talk about with producers here, from here moving forward toward harvest?
Yeah, and so the problem we've had is because the canola and the weather has been so marginal that a lot of folks haven't wanted to put in the inputs, your fertilizers and controlling your weeds. And that's just something that right now the canola needs. We have these rains now, it needs nitrogen, it needs to have had the weeds controlled. And as we get into reproductive growth, we actually look at a lot of our labels on our herbicides, and a lot of our herbicides become off-label. And so if you have some later progressing canola that don't have those bud clusters out yet, we need to make sure we're putting those herbicides because we're getting the conditions that mean that we could actually see this canola crop turn around. If you haven't got your fertilizer on, it's time to get that fertilizer on. But it's the other thing is that we're starting to see a lot around the state is aphids and worms. And we're really starting to see a lot of those. And you can tell here on some of this, you can start to see some of this bullet holing, is really good indication of some of your chewing and feeding worms. And the big thing is a lot of our canola around the state has very little biomass because of how dry it's been. We don't need those things chewing up what biomass we have because we're going to need that for the coming couple of months. So what growers can do if they have canola, they're typically on the underside of the leaf. They're really small right now. You can kind of come and beat some of the canola leaves, and there you see right here we had 2-3 worms kind of pop out of this canola plant here. You'll see these worms, they'll kind of form a C when you get your finger on them, and this is the time that we need to make sure that we're controlling these.
Let's switch gears now and talk about sorghum. Where are most folks with their sorghum crop, and is it too late to get rolling?
Most of the time, we're sitting here now. We're right at the 1st of April. I'd prefer most guys to have had their ground worked, and it would be really good if you are going into a tillage situation that you have already worked your ground, and you can use these rains to kind of smooth everything out. Our no-till guys are looking really good, getting some good soil moisture in. But if you're going into conventional, I'd like to see some gone in and already had tillage operation and start moving towards the next management practices, because we got quite a few coming up.
Let's talk about what you and the team are getting organized for this spring, and it's those canola tours. Talk about those.
Of course, it's one of those annual things. It's April when the variety tours start coming your way, and it's no different this year. With canola, we're looking at the 10th and 12th for the western side of the state, and then we're going to be over on the eastern side of the state on the 17th. And we have a flyer circulating out that we can get and have on the website. That way you can see where we're actually going to be in those critical dates. But yeah, we're looking here in the next 2 weeks to have our variety tours to where growers can come out, listen to what those late season management practices are needing to be, where the crop looks, where our experts say the crop potential could be, as well as looking at how well the varieties are performing this year.
Now, a lot of folks have been busy with the dicamba trainings going on the past couple of months, and those are winding down, but there's still an opportunity left there?
Yeah, there's still at least one more opportunity. On the 4th of April, we're going to have a big growers meeting out in the Panhandle. We're going to talk about a variety of things, cotton production, soybean production, irrigation, and then one of those things is going to be that critical dicamba training. Remember, if you're going to be putting out that extend herbicide onto cotton and soybean this year, you're going to need to have this training to purchase that. So it's one of the, like you said, we're kind of getting towards the end of the trainings. So it's one of those later opportunities that if you haven't made it, you're on the western side of the state and you want to take a trip out to Guyman, it's going to be at Honey's Barbecue there in Guyman Goodwell, and they can come out, hear a little bit about crop production, and get your dicamba certification as well.
Okay, Josh, thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon. And for a link to more information on the dicamba training, as well as the upcoming canola tours, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Folks are ready for the warmth and color of spring to settle in and stay a while. Wednesday morning, air temperatures in the Panhandle were in the 20s. Eva was the coldest location at 23 degrees. For most of the state, morning lows were in the mid-40s. It was warm in the southeast corner of the state Wednesday morning. 3 sites had 58-degree lows. The 3-day average of bare soil temperatures on Wednesday ranged from a high of 66 at Bernieville and Tipton near the Red River to 53 at Copan in the northeast. Summer vegetables and ornamentals like soil temperatures in the mid-60s and warmer. On Wednesday, the count of days since a quarter inch or more of rain fell hit 180 in Kenton. Our early week rains split the state along a line that tracked Interstate 44. South and east of that line, rain amounts were good. 3 Mesonet sites collected 4 inches. 2 to 3 inches was common. To the north and west, blue areas received less than an inch. Panhandle sites were left dry again. Here's Gary with a check on drought conditions.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Well, we certainly have a tale of 2 states, and I-44 appears to be the dividing line, more or less. To the southeast, we have the haves, and to the northwest, we have the have-nots. The line's a little bit fuzzier than that, so let's go right to the new drought monitor map and see what we have. Well, as you can see, much of the southeastern half, basically of Oklahoma, without drought of any kind. We do have some of that abnormally dry, the D0 yellow, but to the northwest of that we have a large area of extreme to exceptional drought covering much of northwestern Oklahoma. But if we go to the water year rainfall map from the Mesonet, this is for October 1st basically through March 27th. We can see the exact reason for that stark difference in the drought monitor map. We have 0.3 inches since October 1st, 2017, up in Kenton in the far western Panhandle, and it increases slowly as we go to the east. And then right when you get close to I-35, boom, that's when you start to get a lot of the higher amounts. And then we get to a maximum of about 30 inches down in far southeast Oklahoma. So that's again the stark difference in rainfall fortunes for the state since mid-fall of last year. If you looked at a percentage of normal rainfall, again from the Mesonet, well, once again it shows those surplus amounts or close to normal amounts across much of eastern Oklahoma, and then just the pitiful amounts as we get up across northwestern Oklahoma, far western Oklahoma, and even parts of central Oklahoma. So now that we're here in spring, when you really need these rainfall events to start to creep up toward the northwest and start to alleviate drought in those areas as well. So let's hope for that in the future. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Talking business now, and why setting up your farm as an LLC may be something worth considering. SUNUP videographer Ed Barron takes us to Okfuskee County to learn more.
We moved into this house. It was in great condition compared to 90% of the other farms, but very simple compared to today. All of this making a living and raising your children doesn't come easy. And our first trust was November 28th of 1982.
When you talk to most farmers and ranchers and you ask them what they want to have happen with the farm or ranch business, they'll almost always say, well, I want to keep that operation intact as it goes to the next generation. And so one way an LLC can help you with that is that operating assets or land or the business itself can be placed in the LLC, and you can give different types of LLC interests to those on-farm and off-farm heirs. So it's a way of helping to deal with the interests of heirs that might have different perspectives on the farm, but at the same time keeping all those assets together and working at peak efficiency.
And when we purchased this land, it was the IRS told you have to charge $25 an acre, he asked then. And can you imagine? Of course, we have more land than we did then, but I don't think without knowing you can imagine what the taxes would have had to sell, even though we had savings. We would have had to sell land, and then we start over.
Taxes for LLCs can actually be selected. You can choose to be taxed as a partnership, which means that all the income and expense items actually flow through the LLC and are reported on the individual tax returns of the owners. And so that avoids having a layer of double taxation at the entity level. Everything just basically flows through the members. But for some operations, it makes a little bit more sense that they are taxed at the entity level, especially if that entity is going to provide things like salaries, retirement benefits, insurance. Those are deductible items for a separately taxed entity that wouldn't be deductible for an individual. Anytime you have any sort of business where there's appreciable assets at risk, it's always a good idea to think about the LLC format for some of those reasons.
If you're going to have some replacement heifers that you plan to breed this spring, you'll want to remember some research that was done here at Oklahoma State University about 17, 18 years ago, where they looked at the effect of a change in nutrition right at the time of the start of the breeding season. What they did in this particular study was take a set of heifers and have them on a good growing diet, about 20% above maintenance. Half of the heifers, they took them and put them on a lower diet that only contained about a third as much as the others were receiving. So they only received about 40% of what they really needed just to maintain their weight. Those heifers, both sets, were given estrus synchronization drugs so that they could time when those heifers would come into heat and therefore ovulate. And by doing some blood samples, looking carefully at the hormone changes in those blood samples, they could tell which of the heifers continued to cycle and to go ahead and ovulate and which ones failed to do that. The heifers that they put on that restricted diet for only 14 days, 30% of them was all that went ahead and had an estrus cycle and ovulation. Whereas 100%, all of the heifers that were maintained on that good growing diet throughout that 2-week period went ahead and ovulated. What this tells me is that we need to be cautious about how we handle heifers right before the start of a breeding season. In some cases, we may be moving them from a pasture where they were receiving some good supplement. Perhaps in some cases where there was rain, they were on wheat pasture, and then moved to a headquarters area so they could be synchronized and artificially inseminated, but perhaps put on dormant Bermuda grass or native range, a much lower quality overall diet. That could mimic that same situation that was taking place in the study that we talked about. Also, if you are in a situation where some heifers might have been in a dry lot and receiving a good growing diet, being hand-fed, and then you decide to put them out into a breeding pasture, perhaps with bulls, again, that same kind of negative loss in terms of protein and energy going to those heifers could have that adverse effect on cyclicity and ovulation rates. So let's keep that in mind. As we go into this breeding season, we want to try to keep these replacement heifers, as they're reaching puberty, we want them to continue to grow and continue to put on weight into and through the breeding season, and we'll get a much higher percentage of them cycling and having a chance to get bred. Hope this helps you this year, and we certainly look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
On Thursday, the USDA released the Prospective planting report for March. And Kim, was it everything that the market was hoping for?
I think it's better than what the market was hoping for. You look at the average of the trade estimates for corn, 80.4 million acres, it came in at 88. Soybeans, the trade expected 91 million plus, it came in at 89, both positive for corn and beans. For wheat, the trade was expecting 46.3 million acres. It came in at 47.3, higher than expectations. Winter wheat, trade was expecting 32.5. It came in at 32.7, higher than expectations. Other spring, big change there. 11.5 for expectations, 12.1 for the actual report. And cotton came in at 13.5 million acres. Last year it was 12.6. I think that 13.5 is probably a little lower than the trade expected. You look at Oklahoma wheat acres, they raised them to 41.3 million acres from 41, and cotton came in at 680 million acres. You know, everybody's been talking about 700 to 750 million acres, and of course it's 585 last year.
Of all those numbers, what numbers should Oklahoma producers be looking at if they're wanting to pencil out their summer crops this year?
Well, if they're looking at summer crops, we can look at, say, southwestern Oklahoma wheat forward contract. I think that's a good number to use. The basis is 58 cents under the July contract, or cash about 420. Corn's a minus 60 under that December contract. $3.37. Milo 65 under for 332. Soybeans 90 cents less than the November contract at 923. If you look at central Oklahoma, it's a minus 40 for a wheat basis, 438. Corn minus 57, 340. Milo a minus 65 cents for 332, and beans a minus 90 at 923. And I think those forward contracts would be the numbers I used when I was penciling out which summer crop I wanted to plant.
Now, staying with the summer crop theme here, cotton looks really good. Everybody's talking cotton, but can it be profitable in Oklahoma this year?
Well, I think it can if the weather, goes along with planting. We get good weather for production. I think the problem is right now, cotton on the board 77, 78 cents. Now the acreage I believe is a little less than expected, but with everybody and their dog planning on planting cotton, if we have good weather and you have good production, I don't think that 77 cents will hold. But right now it looks really good, and you might as well, you don't know when it's going to break, but you might as well take the gamble.
This time of year, we really look at cotton price, or at corn prices and wheat prices. Will corn really impact wheat this year?
Well, corn could. If we have a big corn crop, of course the acreage is down, that's not going to help.
Right.
But if corn prices will stay low, then it's possible, or if corn prices will increase,
right,
with the lower acres, so that's good. So prices increase, that means we can feed more wheat, and we need to get some of this poor quality wheat out of the bins and out of those off the ground and into the feedlots. And I think that would help us get rid of some low quality wheat.
Thank you very much, Kim. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And over the past couple of weeks, we've heard a lot about possible tariffs on steel and aluminum and what that could mean for the agricultural industry. With a little bit of insight on that, here's Extension economist Larry Sanders.
Well, because we do participate in international trade agreements that we have to abide by, we have to have good reasons to do things like this. And the justification of the Trump administration is national security, that we have to have a viable steel and aluminum industry to be able to maintain our national security. And they're concerned that it's continuing to erode away to foreign countries' production. So the hope is that if we do this, it will strengthen our domestic production of this. And there's also the side effect that we will be able to employ more people in those. That's the concept. In the short term, winners obviously are going to be U.S. steel and aluminum producers and people who work in those industries and related industries to those domestic industries. Losers, consumers. Those are going to be some of the losers. Farmers, the threat of trade wars that are going to occur, foreign countries that aren't going to be happy that we're making their steel and aluminum more expensive, or maybe going to slap tariffs on farm output like soybeans and cotton and maybe wheat, and so maybe they won't be able to afford to buy as much from our farmers, or maybe they'll go to some other country to buy them. If you look at the top producers of steel and aluminum globally, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, China are all in that top 10 mix. They may decide that they don't want to come to the United States for agricultural products anymore. China could go somewhere else, so we could lose markets in China. You know, we have had record-breaking years in the last 5 years with our exports of agricultural products selling to the rest of the world. And most of that gain was in the Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim, there's a lot of those countries, South Korea among them, that produce steel and aluminum, and they could very easily decide to look elsewhere for their agricultural inputs, maybe go to Australia or go to Canada for those. So agriculture is at risk big time with this happening. Agriculture gets over a third of its income from sales to the rest of the world, and that's why we are at risk.
Today's topic on FoodWise is the hype about natural sugars, and here to talk about it is Danielle Bellmer, a food engineer here at the Food and Ag Products Center. And Danny, what are the sources of sugar? Let's start with that.
Okay, most of our sugar today comes from 3 sources: sugar cane, sugar beets, and corn. And the sugar that we get from sugar cane and sugar beets is in the form of sucrose. That's the table sugar that we all know and love. And sucrose is actually half glucose and half fructose. And high fructose corn syrup is the sugar that we get from the modification of cornstarch, which is also a mixture of glucose and fructose.
Now, there's been a lot of negativity in recent years about high fructose corn syrup. Why are people so concerned?
There has, and high fructose corn syrup is actually the new food monster, I guess. And it turns out that cane sugar and high fructose corn syrup are identical, pretty much. They both contain about 50% glucose and 50% fructose. And it turns out that food manufacturers actually prefer to use high fructose corn syrup because it's cheaper and easier to use. So we see it in a lot of products now, including soft drinks, salad dressings, ketchup. It's everywhere.
And lately, other sugars like honey and agave have been getting a lot of attention. Why the hype about those sugars now?
So people now think they want natural sugar, but the FDA actually doesn't even regulate the word natural. And so products like honey and maple syrup and agave are seen as a healthy alternative, but guess what? They're still sugar. They're still made of roughly 50% fructose, 50% glucose, just like cane sugar and high fructose corn syrup. But people seem to believe that they have these added health benefits. We also see lots of new terms on food products that are meant to sound more natural, like raw cane sugar, evaporated cane juice. That's just sugar.
So with all of this in mind, what is your recommendation in terms of sugar consumption?
Well, first of all, if you're going to eat sugar, the best form of it is in whole fruit, right? Whole fruit also contains fiber, other vitamins, minerals that help you feel full and give you some added satiety. I believe that our health problems have nothing to do with the type of sugar. It's just that we consume way too much sugar. Most of us need to eat less sugar.
And be aware of where all the sugar is in the things that we like.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot, Danny. For more information on the things that Danny talked about today, go to sunup.okstate.edu. Finally, today, it doesn't get much better than this. Hundreds of first graders interacting with animals and learning about agriculture. Once again, a story with videographer Ed Barron.
Today's our first ever first grade Ag Fest, and so we will have about 500 first grade students from Stillwater Public Schools join us for an experience, just to experience a little bit of agriculture.
What's your favorite part about being here today?
The horse.
The horse? Did you get to pet the horse?
Uh-huh.
All right, what was it like petting the horse?
It felt really nice.
We have booths from Dairy Science Club, a lot of our clubs on campus that have an ag or plant related focus, just to share with students a little bit about their species or interest or the meats area. Agronomy Club will be here as well, talking about plants, and just to share a little bit about that agricultural enterprise with students.
What's your favorite part about being here today?
Not everyone knows the pig.
The pig? Why is the pig your favorite?
Because it's really cute when it's
We've got questions like what products do you eat that pigs contribute to, or what does agriculture mean to you? When they're younger like this, we like to get the more broad ag picture, and then have the swine aspect to back it up. Not only do we get to teach the kids a little bit about agriculture, but also when they get home, parents a lot of times will have tons of questions and call back and want to know more about agriculture as well. So these events are amazingly successful, and we're very excited that we have one this year.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime on our website and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.